remember it was like a young man, probably around 18 years old, who had fallen probably like 20 to 30 feet rock climbing, and his shoulder was dislocated. And so they were wheeling him in. He's literally like screaming, groaning, and stuff. And there's so much action on him.
Greetings. Welcome to another episode of Chats with Dill and Nav. Today, we're going to be speaking about what the experience was like in our last few months of medical school on a rotation called the Capstone. And so I'll let Dylan share what that is, and then we'll jump in, share our thoughts and some of our main takeaways.
The capstone is meant to put a capstone on your entire medical school experience. At least that was the structure at Harvard. And we chose specifically to go the ED route. That's the emergency department, where we had just a handful of shifts, day shifts, evening shifts, and even an overnight shift, kind of reflecting on that patient care element. It is really a gift and a privilege to work with patients, to be invited into their lives in such like vulnerable moments. And this is our last experience of that. And I feel like for me, working in the emergency department, it's a little bit like our send-off. It's almost like a fireworks show, right? You see so much of like the grand finale. I mean, you really see so much happening. I've watched some Grey's Anatomy, but I just know that show is wild. Crazy things happen all the time. The everyday is not so much like that in medicine. However, I will say from spending some time in the emergency department, there were some interesting things that happened. Remember, it was like a young man, probably around 18 years old, who had fallen probably like 20 to 30 feet rock climbing, and his shoulder was dislocated. And so they were wheeling him in. He's literally like screaming, groaning, and stuff. And there's so much action on him. Other times, a couple other highlights where there was like a motor vehicle accident. Everyone's getting ready in their gowns and stuff in the trauma rooms and immediately going through everything, as soon as they are unloaded. Another was we were called that there was like a woman in labor coming via ambulance. And then we got an update over the loudspeaker that the baby was born in the back of the ambulance. So then they wheeled him through, and the doctor came over just to take a quick little peek that the guy was breathing, sitting right there in his mother's lap. And then they just were swiftly off to the labor and delivery floor. They didn't need to spend too much time in the emergency department. So that's grand finale thing, seeing so much and being, still an honor to be there. There's one last story I can share before turning it back over to you, Navid, which I still felt like embodied a lot of what the note I wanted to go out on. And there was a woman I was caring for on my very, very last shift in the hospital as a medical student. And she had a lung condition. At least it was a possibility that she might have what's called a pulmonary embolism, a clot in her lungs, and it nevertheless needed to be kept at the hospital overnight for some imaging. And I was there on the evening shift, getting ready to leave, when I had, helped her with a few things, collected some information. And I remember I was literally had said goodbye to the team and basically clocked out when I was passing by her, and still just took a moment to ask how she was doing. And she told me she's been there for hours. She was hungry. Her throat was dry. And I was like, I can't let the last thing I do as a med student be say, not my problem, and walk out of there. So I did, put my bag down. I went and grabbed some crackers and, peanut butter, whatever was available, grabbed a cup of water, and then wished her well. And I at least feel like that was the tone that I wanted throughout that rotation, to still be fully present and give my full self.
Appreciate you sharing those stories. The fireworks, I hadn't quite thought about it that way, but it really did feel like quite a way to go out with just all the things that you see in the emergency department, and also having just some more, oftentimes we were the first ones to be able to go and see a patient after they've been triaged, and you have a greater sense of responsibility and ownership in that way. And so that felt nice. And I remember also patients tend to just call, they might not realize it's a med, even if we introduce ourselves as a med student, they might just be like, oh, we call you doc or something. And I remember one patient I would check in a few times often. So we had started to really develop a rapport, and it's like, oh, thanks doc, or yeah, like look forward to talking to you shortly. And I just sort of walked out of there, smiled, and I was like, on one hand, that was a really beautiful sentiment, and on the other, it was sort of this bittersweet of, it's yes, I will be graduating and have this title, but not in the way that this patient would, is interacting. And so yeah. I think there was a lot of emotions going through it, and realizing that this part that we had envisioned and looked forward to was coming to an end, and just that the reality was that it was outweighed by just other factors going on that resulted in us, deciding to not continue down this path. So
yeah, so I think it was the capstone in the end served its purpose. It was in a way comforting, kind of the rawness, getting back involved directly with patients. And I think for me, it did provide some closure on the whole med school and clinical chapter. And it's nice enjoying these few moments with you, kind of reflecting on that.
yes, definitely. Well, Dr. Cahill, as always, it's been a pleasure, and look forward to our continued conversations and trying to share our experiences and reflect on some things that we've learned that might be of some value to other folks. So
Always a pleasure. Take care.
you too.